Let's start the recording. Thank you. So today we are going to talk about the DESL, and if you aren't familiar with what DESL means, and many of you might not be, it's another acronym that campus has. It's direct evidence of student learning. And let me add the activity sheet for that now. So I will tell you that I was a little bit confused about this as it's been rolling out for the last, and the space around this has been evolving over the last couple of years. And so it's always, every time that I look into it, it's gotten a little bit different and things have changed a little bit. And that's a good thing, because it can be a confusing space. And I think every time that I look at it, it just seems to be a little bit further clarified. And we're moving into a direction that I really like, in that we are working on aligning the activities that you have in your course with the activities with the course outcomes, and those are being aligned to the program outcomes. And it's just kind of this beautiful synergy that is starting to happen in a more structured way. We are lucky today to have several people from the direct evidence of student learning team in with us, and I think I've got them all as moderators here. So I want to introduce or welcome Mary Thompson, Sandri Salam, Regina Lowry, and Timo on that team to come in, and they're going to be helping me step through this stuff, because again, for me, it's still a little bit of a confusing space, but I've got experts here with us today to help us figure this out. So, Mary, do you want to say anything, or do we just let Sandy come in and do an introduction to it?
So thank you, John. That was really helpful. So welcome, everyone. If people could put in the chat, if you are an instructor, what department or school, college you exist in, that would be really helpful for us to kind of think about where people are coming from and what their experience is with direct evidence of student learning. Sandy and Regina are going to start us out with some brief slides, and we know that active teaching labs are really about your questions and really getting answers to what you're thinking about and why you're here today. So this is very informal. So we're starting out with this just to give some foundational knowledge and to provide a way to give everyone kind of the basics of what the SLA team, the Student Learning and Assessment team, does and what DESL can do for your learning data. And there's lots of ways to begin that process. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time, but we will be very informal so that when you want to stop and ask a question, we'll all be moderating that as well. So thank you. And I will let Regina start.
Hey, can everyone hear me okay?
Regina, yes. You sound great.
All right, thanks, because I'm working between a couple of different screens. All right, so I'm going to step back and give kind of a high overview of just what this whole assessment space here on this campus is in general. So this is an illustration that we use when talking about assessment on this campus and the kinds of activities that are involved in the APHIS space. And APHIS is the software tool or vendor that we use in this assessment space. So it is the assessment management system for campus. And you don't have to go here now, but I will paste a link into the chat of this kind of diagram, and it'll also have more information included as well. Today we're going to be talking just about that direct evidence of student learning part of the pie, I would say. And in this part of the pie, there are several different areas that we go through. Sorry, I'm pulling something up. Things that, as Mary said, talking about aligning learning outcomes to activities, having student-facing outcomes, and then providing different information that students use to better describe their experience. So what is DESL? DESL is where faculty and instructors can begin to answer key questions about what their students are learning in courses. So, are the course activities that the faculty have designed aligned with the learning outcomes? What concepts or ideas need further explanation as students work through different problems? And then overall, how will instructors know that learning has taken place? So what are some of the benefits of using DESL? This allows faculty to capture actionable learning data. So in this tool, faculty align and link course activities to learning outcomes. They evaluate student work using Canvas rubrics. So all of this is taking place in Canvas. Students, faculty have access to student data in real time, so throughout the course, as well as over time, and then use the data to monitor student progress, and they can adjust their assignments or teaching strategies as they go along. So why is DESL important to use now? So in this time, we have gone to more remote learning with both synchronous and asynchronous activities taking place. This gives you, DESL gives you another opportunity to view student learning over time, as I said, as well as at the end of the course. And you also have the opportunity to review where students may be struggling and may need a little more support and guidance.
Thank you, Regina. I'm going to talk briefly about the pedagogy. So as you've learned so far from Regina, it's part of this bigger assessment landscape on the compass. And as we're focusing in today on DESL, we're really excited because learning data is something that a lot of faculty talk about, like, how do I know this activity is working? And when we say course activities, like Regina was referring to, it could be an assessment, it could be a peer discussion board, it could be one section of a rubric. We were working in the College of Engineering recently with a faculty member, and she knew that the students were doing well on the rubric overall, and they were meeting their assessment goals. And when she divided it up to look at one section of the rubric, though, however, how they were being able to present their data visually and their presentation skills, a lot of the students weren't meeting that particular criteria for that particular course learning outcome. And so I think that is a good example of how grading and DESL differ. Grading is an excellent way to look at performance, and it's one part of the whole pie. And so we're not saying that grading isn't important, but looking at it alongside the learning outcomes helps you really examine and get a little bit deeper into where learning is taking place through different parts of your course. Foundationally, what skills are being mapped, what course activities or assignments. You can even link direct Canvas quiz questions in, so you can look at where students are excelling and maybe don't need that foundational review that you expected early on, or they really do need it because 1/3 or more are still struggling. So it's really this real-time look if you're looking at it from a formative perspective. And it's also a way to look back in a summative way to see where students are in their learning trajectory and they met all of your course learning outcomes. So we like to talk about assessment in both formative and summative ways on this slide. And I kind of wanted to weave rating and formative. So formative is over time, and summative is kind of looking through the rearview mirror and what happened. And DESL allows you to do both. And so you can really look at that from both perspectives. And a lot of our early adopters into the DESL space on campus have been groups who have looked at this through the accreditation lens more summatively, But in real time, DESL is a very powerful tool to help you look at the challenges and gaps of particular student learning. Next slide, please. So we often say, and Sandy is going to be next to just show you what the tool looks like and how it looks in real time so you can see the technical side. But the hardest part about DESL is not the how-to part, it's the thinking and pedagogy behind it. So while you have a lot of course activities or modularized learning in your Canvas course right now, not everything needs to be linked or to be a key assessment or an assignment for linking. So one of the ways we like to think about is how much is enough? What are your goals? Are you looking at it formatively to see how students are learning key concepts before moving on? Then you might want to pick some early assignments to help you do that. Or if you're looking more through that rear view mirror through the summative lens, it might be more beneficial to track the big assignments to see if those actual outcomes have been mastered and have been met. So just some key ideas to think about. And we do have several opportunities to walk faculty and instructors and support staff through that to make sure that people can kind of have that conversation in real time when they're trying to decide what is the right key activity assessment to link to the right course learning outcome. So I will now hand it over to Sandy.
Do you want to talk about this one too, or do you want me to?
Why don't you go ahead? And actually, I think this is Regina too, so we can.
All right, so I don't know if one of you want to jump in, but basically, what do I need to do to get started? So Regina, do you want to talk about the CLOs?
Yeah, first of all, you would need to have your course learning outcomes in Lumen, and Lumen is kind of the curricular management system here on campus, and I'll kind of touch on that in a second. Secondly, you would identify your Canvas activities and assignments that measure the learning and then provide evidence of achieving the learning outcome. And lastly, you would go in and link your Canvas assignments to CLOs with the DESL tool inside your Canvas course. So this is just kind of a flow chart of where learning outcomes kind of live. So Lumen, that I mentioned earlier, is the curricular management system. And from Lumen, course learning outcomes feed into APHIS. So there are several different parts of APHIS. The syllabus function, course evaluation questions can be pulled from your course learning outcomes, and that bottom box, the direct evidence of student learning box, we'll talk about right now. So this is just a flow chart of where information flows within the system.
All right, so I'm going to take over. I'm going to do just a short demo of how to set up DESL, just to give you some ideas. And I know there's some questions that are popping in that we'll try and answer as we go along or at the end as well. So direct evidence of student learning is actually using your Canvas assignments and activities, and then it's also using APHIS, and that's where the kind of the connection goes. So we do have an LTI, which if I'll show you in your Canvas courses, that you can actually go into DESL, which is bringing you into the APHIS product. I'm going to show you how you can then link these key assessments and assignments, activities to the CLOs that are in APHIS. And once you have that link, this is just a high-level overview. I'm going to actually show it in just a minute. Once you have that link set up, then you're just basically going to grade the normal way you do throughout the semester. And then I'll show you some reporting options at the end. So when we go into Canvas right now, it may not be turned on in your course, but there is a direct evidence of student learning APHIS option that you can add to your navigation. If you need to learn how to do that, it's in the setting part of Canvas. But when that is turned on, when you click on that, as an instructor, it's going to load up your APHIS DESL tool. And it does take about 20 seconds to load, because what it's doing is making that connection between Canvas and APHIS. And it's going to then show you all of your course learning outcomes. So we did say one of the things that's required is you need to have course learning outcomes in Lumen, because those, like Regina said, flow into APHIS. So if they are there, they will flow then right into APHIS here. And you can see here's my first course learning outcome. And when I scroll down, I think this course has like 5 or 6 different course learning outcomes in that. Right now I have no assignments linked to it, but as soon as I click on this pencil icon, what it's going to do, it's going to load all the assignments that I have published in this course. So this is a course, say I'm teaching, all my assignments are showing. If there is a rubric that I'm using in Canvas to grade it, I can actually link to a specific rubric criteria. If it's a quiz I'm giving in side Canvas, or a test I'm giving inside Canvas where I'm actually grading it with a speed grader, so I can actually see how a student did on a particular question, I can actually link to a specific question on a quiz as well. Or I can use an entire assignment. So in this example, I'm going to link to these 3 assignments. I'm basically saying about a third of each of those is showing that students are achieving this course learning outcome. And that will then create a link from these assignments to this course learning outcome back on that previous screen. So you'll see then, to achieve this course learning outcome, students are going to work on these 3 projects, and then the grade that they get, or the score that they get in those, is going to then flow over here, and it's going to tell me if students have met my expectations, or if they've exceeded it, or if they have not met that. What's nice about this is I can set up this linking, and then I can go along throughout the semester. And as Mary pointed out, maybe I'm using some formative assessments. I can go in and check where students are at any point. Or maybe I can go in and maybe there's an additional assignment I want to add. I can come back in here and change this linking at any point. So I would do this to all my course learning outcomes. I do notice that there is a handful of instructors from engineering on this session. Engineering is also setting this up at the program level. So if you're interested in DESL, you may want to just reach out to us, because some of you are in departments that you're going to have PLOs listed as well as your CLOs. So PLO is a program learning outcome, and then the CLO is a course learning outcome. Once I have this set, then I grade throughout the semester, and you can see I can come in at any point and scan through my students. If there's a gray box, that means assignment has not been graded yet. It's predicting the student has been doing well, so they still are going to exceed expectations. This particular student, I can take a look to see why they're struggling, and maybe they're all group projects. Or what if everyone is at a 1? Then maybe I want to add an additional assessment or activity for them. So this individual student DESL report is something you can look at throughout the semester or at the end. And then also I want to show you, there is an aggregate view. And the aggregate view will show you, again, your course learning outcome. It's going to show me the assignments that I've used, or the activities that I've used that show students are actually achieving that outcome. And then it's going to, if I actually had a rubric, this one was not scored with the rubric, it would give me those options here. And then it does tell me, in this case, I only have 5 students in this course. 1 met the expectation and 4 exceeded it. So again, it gives me some ideas on that. And that's just kind of the aggregate view that you can set up. That's very fast, quick little demo just to show you what it can do. You'll find out in a second, we're offering a lot of additional training sessions on that, which is kind of what we talk about here. So obviously, we're going to get to your questions in just a moment, but we also have some foundational trainings where we actually walk through this step by step. That'll be, I think we have some yet this semester, and we have quite a few scheduled for next semester. We also have a deep dive Canvas course that Timo will be leading, that anyone who takes our foundation course is enrolled into that. And it's something that you really need to start thinking about now, because the biggest part of this is, what activities do I choose? What is showing me that students are learning this outcome? And we'll get to some questions in just a moment. And then we also have some videos that are in the final stages that will kind of walk you through some of these, how to do some of this. I left this in here. The team probably doesn't realize I did. I just want to let you know, all of you who are instructors, you can get into this automatically from your campus course. I do just want to mention, if you have, say, an instructional designer who is helping you, or someone who's not listed in the student information system, they would not be able to get into DESL automatically, but that is a role we can give them. So I noticed there were a couple instructional designers that are part of our group today. So I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that. So Mary, or Regina, anything else you want to add before we go to the questions?
We have a lot of different departments and schools and colleges. So if you are looking at your course, I think we just want to reiterate this. Regina said it, and I just think we want to put an underline and highlight on it, that course learning outcomes do need to feed into your course, and they need to come from Lumen. If you're not sure and you want some support doing that, we'll send documentation after this with our slides to show you how to do that and how to look up if your course learning outcomes, if they're just in your syllabus and they've never gone through Lumen governance, that probably means they're not in the right place, and we can work with you at your department level to have that happen. We have some processes in place to get course learning outcomes, if they've been approved, to go through Lumen in an expedited process. So we can also support that. There's a lot of really good questions coming up. So John, do you want to help lead us through the active teaching lab? You do such a nice job with.
So yeah, and I actually have a question right away. Sort of building off of what Sandy was just saying and what you are just saying, how much of the campus has already gone through this, and sort of what is the scope and scale? I know that the scope is to do all timetable courses, but like how far are we along with this? If we haven't been involved in this yet, what's sort of the timeline? Do we hope to get everything all tied neatly with a bow over the next semester, at the end of this semester, next year, 5 years from now?
So it depends on who you ask, John. So Lumen is a relatively new system.
Okay.
And so many courses are not in Lumen. I would say more courses are not in Lumen than are. And that doesn't mean that you haven't worked hard on your course learning outcomes or done that at the department level. But the governance process for making changes to a course is significant. And we have an expedited process so they can go directly into Lumen. And that's why there's a big push on campus to get the course learning outcomes in the right place so that people can use all of our tools, and that they would have them so that they would not have to. So once they're in Lumen, they're always going to be popping up through your syllabus, through the Decile tool, so you don't have to redo that process. It's a one-time work process flow. So we're very far away from getting that in, but we have systems in place to support. So we're working mostly with accreditation programs now at the program and course level. Regina has worked really hard at getting all the program level outcomes and worked very closely with programs. So program level Decile is actually farther along than course level.
Got it. And just to reiterate or rephrase, we're starting sort of with the ones that need it, who need to have accreditation, this sort of done for accreditation, because that's where the need is sort of most urgent. And then after we do that at the program level, we will tie together with the course level for the accreditation ones, and then sort of work on the next willing, I guess.
We're always willing to work with instructors and departments and disciplines who are ready to work. Accreditation partners just had more of the mapping done to use Decile because they had to do it for accreditation. So they were more positioned to use Decile right away. And there was more understanding through the department or discipline about the learning data or record of how students were performing on different course learning outcomes, because that was a needed goal because of accreditors.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
If I'm an instructor, how do I know whether the course level outcomes or program level outcomes are in Lumen? Is this just I need to contact somebody in my department or school to sort of let me know, or will I automatically be informed?
So you can look up your course and your program in Lumen. Everything that is in Lumen would show up. And if you don't know how to use Lumen or you need help, Regina and I can help. So you can reach out to us directly and we can help.
Right.
And as Mary said, all program learning outcomes are there. The thing with programs is the programs need to then create their curricular map. And that is something we didn't talk about today. But if a program is interested in setting up their curricular map, what you do is you basically decide which courses are in that program. And then you basically set up this curricular map. And once that is done, you can do DESL at the program level.
Okay.
Oh no,
Cliff,
we have
go ahead.
Cliff.
Yes, you have Cliff. Just curious, are the any of the program level or the course level outcomes, are they available or will they be found and generated within the syllabus, the APHIS syllabus?
If you have your course learning outcomes in Lumen and you want to use the APHIS syllabus, they will automatically download into the syllabus. Is that correct, Sandy?
That's correct. And any
is another way to check, Cliff.
Yep. And if you are someone who does use the APHIS syllabus tool, the course syllabus tool in Canvas that says APHIS, you can also add section learning outcomes. So if you do end up going into DESL in your course and you see a outcome that starts with an S, that means it's a section. If it starts with a C, it's a course. And the C ones are the ones that are coming from Lumen.
All right, so they will automatically flow if we're using.
Sandy, could you address Angela's question?
Where is that one? Let's see, I don't have that up.
Oh, in the chat there, it looks like the option is to edit course, but then that appears to go through the approval process. Is there just a simple way to add course outcomes?
Oh,
and
this
Angela,
is
you're asking.
So Angela, that's the expedited process that we're talking about. The easiest way to go through the Lumen process is to contact Regina and myself, and we can help you work with your assessment coordinator to get those course learning outcomes approved in an expedited way to not go through the full governance process. If they're already approved in your department, school, or college, they can be uploaded into Lumen through our API-R expedited process really quickly.
Go ahead, Angela.
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of follow up on that. So yeah, I'm in SMPH, so I think, is it Andrea Poling?
Andrea Paling would be your person.
Yeah, she's handling that, and yeah, I've talked to my chair. We're gonna tackle it in December. But I guess I'm confused. I went through the whole course approval process in 2017, and so there were course learning objectives, but I don't see those reflected at all. So I'm just wondering why that didn't get transferred over and why we're going through this whole other process if that information was approved 3 years ago.
So Lumen wasn't around. Is Lumen like 3 years old? So like I think you just missed it, Angela. So
that's terrible.
Lumen is the problem.
Yeah,
so yes, you did all the right things,
but
and Lumen did an expert.
So why didn't it? I don't know, it's just like a broken system.
Because Lumen didn't exist yet.
No, I know, but other
far ahead of the curve, Angela. You need to slow down.
No,
you're too darn smart.
No, I just meant like the credits and everything else got transferred, right? So like, why didn't course objectives get transferred?
And they should have, because they were still already creating it back then. So it's probably something we need to check on. And if they're not, then you could go through the expedited process. But we just need to, what we find sometimes is sometimes they're termified incorrectly. So we probably just need to check on your course.
And Andrea Paling is your best person for that, and she works with us directly too, Angela, so we're happy to connect the dots. But yeah, if they're not in Lumen correctly, that's something we would need to check on and why that didn't happen. That's a good question, but it's more technical than we can do right now.
All right. I want to take 30 seconds for other people to raise your hand with any questions that you don't want to put or type out in the sheet, and we can go ahead and raise your hand and unmute and say them here. So that's an option for you to get your questions or ideas or issues or concerns across, and then we can go to the activity sheet. All right, and hearing nothing, let's focus on the activity sheet then. Let me just go through the activity sheet real quick. As usual, we have our sort of table of questions up here at the top here that you should feel free to jump into the the left column here with whatever questions or ideas. Of course, we can add more lines as necessary. We've got some in here that we will talk about or talk to. Mary and others have already been adding answers. That's awesome. And then we've got, as a resource sheet, we have a little bit of a, why have Decile? And we've got a nice little link to a video here with John Zimbrona and Beth Martin talking about how they used it. This is a section that I tried to put together, and I'd like to thank the folks on the Decile team in helping me sort of get it right, or I think it's right. But where it all fits in, and this is, as Angela mentioned, where was Lumen a while ago? The space keeps on evolving, and so this is my attempt to try to map it out, and I hope it's useful, but if it's not, let me know. You can all add comments there, right? How Decile works, we got a little screenshot. Thank you, Sandy, for walking us through what that actually looks like in Canvas with the setting up the expectations, etc. And then there's a whole area about Decile and Wisconsin experience, and you notice that that it's in the center of the little diagram that was shared out and that was shared in the slideshow as well. So there's that as well. We'll talk about that a little bit farther later on. I believe Sandy had mentioned the Direct Evidence of Learning Canvas course as a way to, if you want to get more involved, sort of ahead of the game, but not too far ahead of the game like Angela does. You can join in on this, and then there's a second course that I heard that once you get through this one, you can get to. Is that also correct? And Timo's going to be leading that. Did I hear that correctly?
That is correct.
All right, excellent. And then a
I
couple
believe
of
the one you're
scenarios
showing
about.
there is Tim. The one you're showing there was Timo, so there's one before that. Isn't that?
Oh, there is. Okay.
So we typically like to
one?
do a 1 hour kind of foundational training to get everyone launched, and then Timo does a deeper dive with topics so that people can really think through step by step the process as they're working on it, get the support they need.
Okay. All right, good. That's helpful. And then is there a link to that initial, or is that initial thing a contact you and the team, and then you'll share that?
We typically like to work with a group who is working together collaboratively, but we are opening it up for the spring. We'll have some separate links for individual faculty to sign up. Now we tend to be working with a whole group of faculty in a department who want to walk through the process together and kind of have a collaborative foundational training.
Okay, so
but
that makes
we will have
sense.
open
So
links and yep. So it's a both and.
Good, both and good. And then a couple of scenarios of sort of what it looks like, and then some challenges. Great. All right. So back up to the questions. I started asking the questions as the presentation started, and I guess I appreciate that people have started typing in. I think Mary, you typed in the answer to this one. But one of the things that when I think Regina was talking about it's being used to support and guide students, my ears perked up, and I thought, oh wait, how is this different from Canvas Analytics? How is this different from the Learning Analytics dashboard that's being developed? And what does that all, how will that all flow together? Can you talk through your answer a little bit, Mary?
Absolutely. So Kim Arnold, who is one of the leads in learning analytic data for LEAD, and I meet with the SLA team regularly to really look at how we can support both sides of course from a student perspective for an instructor looking at what students are doing and how they are learning. So learning analytics is behaviors, time on task. It is not learning data, but it can inform learning data. So for example, if you're noticing that a student hasn't been taking the time to really go through the readings that you have listed on Canvas, or is really struggling with the concept, you might look at some of their behavioral analytics or learning analytics to help them maybe think about their tasks from week to week and how to support how they go about their learning. And our work and reports is really about how the learning looks tied to the course learning outcomes. So our eventual goal, which I put here, is that we have a roadmap for future integration for DESL and LEAD with some shared dashboarding so you can see those together. And we're looking for some instructors who are working in both spaces to help us really think through how that visual data will be presented, because that is our future roadmap for next year. We were slowed down a little bit due to COVID and other things, but that roadmap is clearly delineated in a goal and for campus to help instructors have a really clear view of what students are doing, and so that they can look at learning and learning analytic behaviors in one place.
And this is Tim. I'll just add to that. Another overlap is that obviously when the data that you get out of DESL has the same types of issues and questions you have about the data you get out of anything else, is looking at that data and making sense of it. So that's an important part of this as well. So there's always to look at that and think critically about the data that you get. What is it telling you? What isn't it telling you? What decisions can you make based on it? What decisions you shouldn't make based on that?
All right, good. All right, thank you. And let's see. The next one, as an instructor, how do I choose which activities? And I put this, this was one of my questions as well. I guess what I'm wondering is, there's this idea of teaching to the test. If I just mark the, every third or fifth or whatever activity, will I be tempted as an instructor to place more emphasis on making those activities, those DESL activities, sort of put more energy into those, polish those a little bit better, and then do the other activities kind of fade off because they aren't being counted in DESL?
I mean, we have an entire section on our deeper dive course that Tim goes into, and he has a nice framing about what are the key activities and assessments, and how do I both look at the grading I'm doing and the course learning I'm doing to really break apart those two pieces of the puzzle of how students can get a good grade but may be underperforming on a particular learning outcome or vice versa. So it is about backward design. I saw Angela add that in designing good course activities. It also kind of forces us to do something which I had to do a lot as a faculty member when I was teaching in Blackboard at the time, is am I adding assignments because I think they need more practice, or am I really doing this to help support learning? And so it also helps you be really conscientious and clear about what you're having students do, and if it's quality over quantity. So there is that conversation that we can have and reflect upon, but it's also your goals, formative or summative, which I alluded to briefly in our overview. Are you looking at real-time data, which might be more of your assignments than your assessments? Or are you looking more summatively to look at how people performed on some of those core learning goals and outcomes to see if they are meeting expectations? And Timo, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just would say the comment about backward design. Yeah, obviously, those people who've gone through Blend EW, those types of things, where a lot of them are in this session, have already thought about this, and they've thought about how their activities support their course learning outcomes. That isn't necessarily the case across the board on campus. So if you've done some of that work, you're already ahead of the game, and so you know what activities support what course learning outcomes. What Mary was talking about in terms of thinking about key assessments is kind of another step, which is of all the things you know that link to your course learning outcomes, which of the things are you going to use as evidence to prove that? And they may not be all, they won't be all of your activities. But again, to Mary's point, it also depends on whether you're doing summative or formative assessments. But John, I get your point in terms of the things that are quote unquote counted might more attention, but it's really attention just for you, really, because the instructor is really the main audience for this information. At least is how we're looking at it right now. That you're the one who is getting the information, so you're only getting the information you're going to get is only as good as what you link it to. So I mean, you could game the system if you wanted to, but it's only gaming it for yourself, right?
Well, so I guess I'm going to add a question to the bottom here that some people might be asking right now, and maybe that's one that we can address right now. But how will this assessment inform? I'm going to put things like tenure and rehiring of adjuncts, etc. Like, if we measure it, is this going to be used for? And this is a difficult question that you probably don't have the answers to, and I recognize the sensitivity of that. But I know that somebody of our participants is thinking about this. So,
well, John, I think in one hand, I think these things go hand in hand with things like course evaluations, right? So we have course evaluations that give us feedback, and oftentimes that feedback isn't, wildly helpful in terms of making informed decisions about.
And is biased. We know that student feedback is biased.
Right. Yes. So one thing that I think is really important to take away is that DESL information can help supplement that. So you may have courses evaluations that tell one side of the story, but you also can marry that with DESL information. So you might get information that says, I don't like the way my instructor dresses. Okay, great. But what you can also say is, okay, in DESL, okay, but here's the information I have that shows that I'm actually achieving the course learning outcomes that I set forth. So you might not like me as a person, but the course learning outcomes that I've set forth, I'm actually meeting. So I think that's helpful to tell the whole better or more whole story about how the course is functioning.
Timo, that's a really nice answer. So we started talking about direct evidence, and so it's always good to talk about the inverse, which you are talking about, which is course evaluations, which is an indirect measure, and often is students' belief or perspective on their own learning. And so so you have evidence of what they're directly learning, and DESL allows for that. And you have your indirect measures, which are surveys, course evaluations, and other more institutional knowledge. This is more granular, and you have a lot more control over it because you can decide what are the best ways and activities to look at that. What we often don't talk about is that the indirect measures of student learning, you can, once your course learning outcomes are in Lumen, the source of truth, you can pull that through the syllabus, which we talked about briefly. You can pull that into your indirect course evaluation, so you can have students give their indirect belief or perception about their learning. And then you have direct evidence through DESL at the course level to say, this is how I know they learned it, and this is the evidence of that. Students do not have access to that data. It's really for the instructor, and it's really for the instructor to look at the learning goals that they have and how they want to meet them and how to support student learning. Program level DESL does allow you to share how their learning looks over the course of a program. So students can get what's called a course learning report, a CLR, where they can review their course learning report over time to see how they're meeting the program level outcomes across. And pharmacy has been using that, and it's been pretty powerful.
Yeah, and for students, it's a comprehensive learner record, and that is something as a program you have the option to turn that on or off. So We have it off as a default, but programs can decide that they want to turn that on, and pharmacy does have that on for their students.
All right, good. Good to know. Okay. And we've got 11 minutes left here. So again, I'd like to encourage other people to ask, chip in their questions. So these aren't just all my questions. And I'd love to revisit this, or maybe the future of this. So for folks who went through things like Timo's Blend at UW, or Karen Skiba's Teach Online at UW, or Karen Spader's Preparing to Teach Online, and who have thought about backwards design and have some activities that they are linking informally to the course outcomes, is there a way that those of us who aren't in sort of in the hopper for the Lumen stuff to play with DESL and APHIS in like sandbox courses as we start formalizing this a little bit more, so that we are going to be just ready to jump in when it does kind of eventually turn to us?
That's probably a question for me. It's really hard to do a sandbox because you have to be APHIS only. APHIS is fed by SIS, so anything in SIS is automatically in APHIS, and there are not practice courses in SIS. We have a handful of demo courses that we can set up for individuals, but it's a very high touch, and to keep it updated is very hard. So, but if you don't have a course you can work with, just talk with us. We can see what we can do, but I can't promise anything.
All right, a lot of extra work, and then things might change.
A lot of time-intensive work on it, yes.
But I think it's also important to just mention, John, that you can't do harm if you're in a course by turning on DESL and your course learning outcomes are there and playing with it. And if your course learning outcomes are there, that's the best place to start, is how can we get them in the right place for you so you can start exploring. You can unlink, you can link, you can publish. Like it's not going to hurt your course to start DESL linking. It's not going to change what students see or their overall experience.
All right, this is really good for me to hear. So if we are in a course that is a timetable course, we can't wreck anything by going in and playing with DESL. That's what I heard?
Right.
That's what you heard.
You're not changing any assignments. You're just creating that link. And that's what's so nice about this. A faculty member can try it and then decide they don't want to use it. They can just unlink everything. So it's not showing to students at all. So you just need to have access to a Canvas course. If for John,
okay, that's great to know. One of the things
John,
that I repeat over and go ahead, Timo.
In addition, you can create, and Sandy kind of alluded to this earlier, there are things called section level outcomes, which you can also add yourself that are not course learning outcomes that are formal to your course. So you may have your formal course learning outcomes, which may or may not be in Lumen, but you also can create your own section learning outcomes and use those in DESL as well. So just because you don't have things in Lumen doesn't mean you can't move forward and do stuff in DESL.
Okay, this is really, I love that answer. I love hearing that, because that does get people able to play with it at some level, right? Some grain size activities to section level things without that needing to be, that step with Lumen needing to be done. Did I say that right?
Yep, that's true. One other really important aspect to this is you don't have to have this set up day one when the semester starts. As a faculty member, I could decide to do this at any point. I've been super stressed. I'm getting my course ready. I'm going online now. And I have 1 week left of the semester, and I wish I would have set something up. I can still do my linkings at that point and have used DESL for the semester. It just has to be done at some point during the semester. Ideally, if you're using it for formative, you'd want it set up so you can look at information along the way. But it is something you could do at any point in the semester. And
you could add links in the middle of the semester. Yeah, so you can do it at any time during the semester. Timo is correct that you can do section level outcomes, but we always encourage people to get their course learning outcomes in Lumen because they carry over, and it will be, and it gives you more longitudinal data so that you can look at learning over time. So that's an important caveat. So don't avoid the course learning outcome Lumen side just because it's an extra step. It's the right way to begin.
Okay.
Yep, I agree.
Plain at section
So
level, perfectly smart. But don't avoid course learning outcomes in Lumen, please.
it
All
won't
right,
hurt
great.
you, right, Mary?
It will not hurt you. It will never hurt you.
All right. Well, in the 6 minutes left, let's run through the last 3 of these. Okay, so we talked a little bit about section level outcomes, course level outcomes, and program outcomes. And the program outcomes are done by the, again, that's a university or school level thing, correct? Or program.
It's at the program level or department level.
But if they contact you, you can contact. So if somebody is interested in their program or certificate, they can reach you and you will connect them with the right people.
Yes, Regina
Yeah,
has all the program level outcomes. Go ahead, Regina.
Yeah, program level outcomes. Anyone can go to the guide at this point. Program learning outcomes are student facing. So on every guide tab, departmental guide tab has a guide tab for their program learning outcomes. So that's certificates, capstones, undergrad and grad degree programs. Yeah.
All right. And I'm just going to throw this in. Oh, Timo did already. Way to go, Timo. Thank you. That's another term. The guide sounds very ominous. We already talked about the APHIS syllabus, so that's good. I guess the last question that we haven't talked about in the last few minutes is now, is there a way for instructors to get feedback on or workshop their course learning outcomes so they move beyond the understand type statements? Oh, this is good. Yeah, I have some thoughts on that, but go ahead and explain whoever wrote in this answer. I like that.
We really like to work with full curriculum mapping to help so that we're not so Regina and I are the main pedagogical supports in the student learning assessment team. And while we would like to work with every single instructor on creating strong measurable course learning outcomes, we like to work with a group so that we can kind of support the process towards the curriculum mapping for program learning outcome linking and get that support. But if someone sends something to us, we often give feedback. Regina sits on the university curriculum committee for all course learning outcomes that go through there and gives a lot of feedback and support as well. Regina, did you want to add anything?
No, just feel free to shoot me an email if you need any help with anything, and I get back to people fairly quickly. So.
And let me jump in there with
I just want to say, certainly we want to make sure that we get good course learning outcomes into Lumen before they get into Lumen than after, right? It's easier to change things before they get into Lumen than after.
It's always better. And we like to work with the school college process, so we want to make sure that we're working within the department or school college process that's already set up.
And let me just jump in with like a shout out to my colleagues. If you would like more help working on your course outcomes, making strong outcomes, sorry, not your course outcomes, learning outcomes at the section level and activity level, unit level, because those are the ones that you as an individual instructor can work on. And I'm going to guess here that if you have thought this through very clearly, the curricular committees and such who work on your course level outcomes are more likely to say, oh, these are some good ones. So instead of having them make something up if they're not familiar with your program, having you guide them and already have strong ones because you've worked on them in things like Teach Online at UW, Blend at UW, some of these other programs that we've got online here now.
Yes, and that's correct, John. We just want to make sure that they're the approved ones so that everyone is circled in and looped in. So if you are part of a section of a course that's taught by multiple people, there has to be some collaboration and support that those are the agreed course learning outcomes. And if they're not agreed upon, how can we collaborate to make sure that the 3 to 5 that you do choose are agreed upon for every section of the same course? And that if you want to have some that are different, that's where Timo's use of section level outcomes are at their best pedagogically.
Great. All right. In the last minute, I want to give anybody a last minute chance to raise their hand and ask that burning question that they haven't shared yet. And as you are raising your hand, I'm going to thank our panel of moderators, Mary and Sandy and Timo and Regina, who have shared today. Thank you for coming in and adding your expertise to this potentially confusing topic and theme. Any last questions? If not, thank you all for coming and joining us. It's 2 o'clock and we're done. We have one more on December 2nd on using plain language in your syllabus. So we're looking ahead towards next semester and how you can more clearly communicate the expectations and ideas of your courses. So very good. Those of you who are in my Leveraging Technology to Teach course, I will see you at 2:10, and I'm happy to stick around for the next few minutes to chat with folks if anyone wants to sit around and chat.